Happy Friday. John Lorden here with another episode of BrainScratch. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Today, we are doing part 3 of the Bruce Cucchiera case. Quite honestly, I don't know if it's the last part. There might be more, but this is the second half of the interview with his family. I want to give a very big thank you to everyone that's watching and sharing these videos and having great conversation in those comments. I really appreciate you guys. Thanks for supporting all of us through this, Bruce's family and myself. I know that this is not an easy case to comprehend. There's a lot of levels, a lot of details that you have to get into to really understand all of this. This week, we're continuing the interview with Caitlin and Chris. Please remember that there are certain details we can't go into because of where the investigation is heading, and we are also protecting identities. Please keep in mind everyone is innocent until proven guilty. We're simply sharing information discovered by the family, what they went through, and their thoughts and feelings about all this. In this episode, we're going deeper into the financial aspects of Bruce's death, who gained the most from his death financially, how the insurance company actually responded to those claims, and why the family is so focused on that business partner. Let's get back to my interview with Chris and Caitlin and how they found not one, but 2 copies of Bruce's will. Where were those copies found?
I was cleaning out his office of all of his stuff, to take home. This was like a couple months after. And when I went, and his top left drawer underneath his computer, there was 2 folded copies of the will and buy-sell agreement between him and the business partner. Signed. My dad had signed them. And he had, more notably, amended it and made a few changes 4 months prior to his death.
Interesting. But these are obviously like Xerox copies. They're not the originals.
Correct. They were Xerox copies.
And this is important, something to point out, was that 2 days after the funeral, we were at one of my dad's friend's house and his home, and the business partner came over and met with us. And he told us that he had a few individuals go through my dad's office and an attempt to locate a will or any kind of life insurance policies, and that they were not able to find any. They weren't able to find any at that point. But then whenever Caitlin goes into the office, on the top drawer, at the very top, not hidden under thing, not in a book, just right on top were 2 copies of the will and, this buy-sell agreement. So I don't know. You can take that for what it,
Yeah, seems like they didn't search very hard. It's interesting because considering it's copies and that you found them so easily, if I thought anything really wicked was going on with this, I would say, oh, they must be, copies that have been duped or kind of gussied up to be something more beneficial for someone else, and you were meant to find them, especially hearing that they had employees go through there and try to locate them. Unless they weren't looking for the copies, unless they were possibly looking for the original, hit the original, okay, we've got it, and that's that.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like if that were the case, they would have told us, hey, we found like copies, we just haven't found the originals yet, because you have to have the originals, obviously, for it to be, legally binding. But then, I think the other, not theory, I mean, it could be a theory that I have, is that, maybe one of these individuals that was going through his office, worked in the office with him, with my dad, and had, felt bad for what happened. There were a lot of people that were really affected in his office, when this happened. And maybe, they felt like that Caitlin and I needed to know, maybe they did find the original and something happened. Before something happened to the original, they made a couple copies, 2 copies, one for me, one for Caitlin, to see, just to make sure that we know what our dad wanted,
Wow.
So, I mean, that's just something else. I mean, maybe not, but I mean, I just have a hard time trying to understand how they could have gone through his office and not found these.
Yeah. No, it was right there. It was right there.
Yeah. Some of the documentation that you presented to me actually broke out the details a little bit. So effectively, we have the business partner taking out life insurance for your father, several different policies totaling to an amount of about $5 million. Caitlin, I don't want to go into the details too much, but essentially the copies of the will that you found, and correct me if I'm paraphrasing this wrong, showed that your father wanted some of that money to go towards kind of buying out business interests and doing stuff like that, and then really taking care of the two of you. Does that sound fair?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And we know the original is never found. The business partner, do you show him the copies? Do you talk to him about the copies at all? And what happens?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you can explain, Chris.
Well, I mean, so prior to when Caitlin found these, the mycelic, I had been conversing over the phone with the business partner, and he was laying out things that he was going to do, and I had not seen this will or the buy-sell agreement yet, and it was naming specific things that were listed in this agreement. I mean, specific things for specific people and the exact amounts, some things to some organizations and schools. So I knew that he knows, he saw this before, right? And then she found it, and I was like, wow, this is the same stuff he was saying. But then we had a face-to-face meeting with him after we kind of got the feeling that he was not going to be doing any of this stuff. So I dropped it on him, and he just basically said, I'm gonna have to take this back and review it. And
that was the last time I think we sat down with him ever.
So, yeah.
Wow. So based on what you saw in the copies, and then based on what actually happens, once again, without getting too personal, the things that were promised to you in the copies and what you actually wound up with, are we talking half of what was mentioned? Are we talking 10% of what was mentioned? Are we talking even less of what was mentioned for you guys in the copies that you actually wind up with?
Less.
Yeah.
Less.
Yeah.
So we have the business partner kind of be the big beneficiary here and even make promises to you directly about what he's going to do. Do you know if any of those other promises came through for any of the other entities your father wanted to leave something behind for?
Not to our knowledge. Mm-mm.
Okay. Oh, man. Was anything that was written in the will actually followed? It sounded like he knew about it. He's quoting pieces of it to you, but anything that you know of actually followed from your father's wishes? No.
I mean, he made sure in our face-to-face whenever I actually brought up to him the fact that he had named all those things that it was the exact agreement. He just let me know that, he was just saying things and that he lost his best friend. And so, I mean, so that's why he was emotional, and he was saying he was going to do all these things. So,
if I lost my best friend and then someone came and said they found a copy of his will and I looked into it and I believed that was actually a copy, I would probably do some of that stuff for my best friend. I mean, it's kind of mind blowing to me. I really wonder what type of relationship they had. How long did they know each other?
Over a decade.
Over a decade. Yeah. I mean, that's how long they actually worked together. Before that, I mean, I don't know. I didn't know him until they started working with each other. But I mean, I think the larger point is like, how can you sit there and like tell the kids of the person that was murdered, like, hey, feel bad for me, my best friend died, not to the kids.
I remember that conversation, and I walked out and I called Chris and I said, something doesn't feel right for that. Like, that just felt weird to be poor, woe is me to his kids. I didn't like that at all.
It sounds like a deflection technique. It sounds like even if he thought that he was being insensitive, it's a good way to shift your focus all of a sudden and get off the conversation of what's actually going on, with the will.
And he's definitely like, everybody is entitled to feel upset about what happened, but I mean, come on, your actions, like what you just said about, if he was truly your friend, not even your best friend, if he was your friend that obviously entrusted you to be an executor and administrator of this estate, and you don't follow anything,
Yeah.
I mean, no.
Did your father?
Yeah, I think it's important to say he was named in the will and buy-sell agreement. Specifically for the will, he was to be the administrator of that will.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the money from the life insurance policies that the company had on him, that was the money that was part of it was supposed to be used to complete the items within the agreement. So
right.
It was kind of like, I don't know, it was kind of supposed to be used as like a life insurance policy, because I guess because he, was older in life and didn't have the amount of, wasn't able to get for a reasonable price the amount of life insurance that he wanted, so.
Right. Did your father have siblings?
Yes.
Yeah, he had 2 sisters.
Because I know this is a bit of a tough situation. He's newly married. The new wife signs a prenup, so maybe he doesn't want to tie up his life insurance policies with the new wife in some way. I kind of understand some of that. But then to have policies that are taken out and you're using your business partner to kind of be the executor of your will and all that, it sounds, maybe there's a lesson in this for other people that are watching this. Why not use a sibling instead for something like that? Or at least make sure that your children know where the certified copy is, have it in a safe deposit box somewhere. I've done a little research after looking into this case, just like, where could that original be? Is there maybe a safe deposit box somewhere? Your father worked in the banking industry. Wouldn't he think about that? This needs to be accessible somewhere where my family can actually find it. It's.
I think this is where that trust really was taken advantage of, because I have been told more than once in regards to this from the wife, that he trusted the business partner immensely and just said he would do the right thing. He just was so adamant about that and trusting. And I think that's where, it became a fault.
I don't know if you want to put this out there or not, so I'll give you the chance to tell me no, and I'll go ahead and remove it. But I know when I've talked to you, it does seem like your father took a trip at one time that was just a few years before this, and it seems like he gave a copy of his will at that point to the business partner, right?
Chris, you want to talk about it, or?
So I don't know exactly. I just remembered he was very concerned. He went to Romania. He was very concerned about dying on that trip somehow. And so he sat down and had a conversation with me, at least, because I don't know if Caitlin was still living in the area or not. But he basically said, look, if anything happens to me, you go to this person and this person, business partner, and then this other individual, and they will know everything. They have everything laid out, what I want to have happen. And it kind of seems like it's almost similar to what happened here. I think, like you said, the lesson learned is just don't trust. Just get everything signed and notarized and with an attorney. Don't, trust people because, not everybody's going to be involved with a $5 million life insurance. Yeah. But, a lot smaller amounts of money that people will do things that aren't right in order to,
That's a really good point. That. Yeah, and sometimes it's family too. I've seen that myself. Sometimes it's family that goes after each other for, just in very, very bizarre ways when someone passes away. So, was there anything else suspicious related to the will that you guys noticed around the time of his death?
Yeah, so 20 days prior to his murder, he actually had signed a promissory note to the business partner for the amount of $666,000 plus. This was to record the purchase of a property from the business partner to our dad. But according to the lawyer, the actual transaction of the purchase of this property took place years prior.
That's weird. What, he bought it on credit and didn't pay for it until years later?
I think this kind of points to the relationship that my dad, I'm sure they had it at one, right? They had a relationship where it was basically he was buying an undivided interest in a property. So a 1/3 interest in a development that my dad didn't have the $600,000 to do. Mm-hmm. So he took a loan from the business partner to buy this interest. Well, this was before 2010. This was in 2009 when he got this interest. But then, like Caitlin just pointed out, on April 4th, 2012, the business partner came to him and said, hey, sign this promissory note. And then 20 days later.
Right.
So I don't know, so you got to think there was we could not find any kind of record of a transaction. We didn't have money going into his bank.
Right.
So what would have happened if that promissory note wasn't signed and this happened to our dad? Well, what would his claim have been to the $600,000?
Right.
Would he have proved it? I'm just saying, maybe there's a way he could have, but it seems to me like this is just like strengthening up a paper trail to make sure that everything that he feels like he was going to get or he was owed, it was going to come to him because
your father wasn't going to be around anymore. Yeah.
And I think it's important to note that I guess one of the reasons that it's been told to us of why certain things didn't happen with the life insurance was because of some debts. And so I think, that is being used, and that just kind of,
Gotcha.
You strengthen it up saying, oh, look, there is another debt here.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that your father's relationship with his current wife, Anne, wasn't exactly in great shape. How was it strained?
I don't know. I'm not going to pretend like I know I was involved with their relationship. Or in any way, I wasn't. I let him. He just kind of went and did his thing. But I do know just from reading his emails now, right? There was problems. There was lots of problems. They were, talking about going to, counseling. I do know that the Easter before, they didn't spend Easter together, and our dad had become extremely religious, in the years, obviously before going to Romania, doing all that stuff. But so Easter was an important holiday for him to spend with family, but they didn't spend it together. I do know he told another friend that, he had won at an auction, a trip to Florida, that that she would not be going, and this was in June or July, of 2012. That she would not be going because she was going to be out of the house by then. So
okay.
So maybe they patched things up. Who knows? But because it seemed to be kind of a relationship where they were just look, it was a age difference there. It was tough. It was tough. I think a lot of what hurts me is I just feel like a lot of my dad's the position he was in life and just how he felt about himself and the sadness was more due to how things ended with our mom. Kind of losing out on having his whole family together, and he had told many people. He's told me that was his biggest regret in life was that happening, and so. It kind of makes me sad. It just it makes me sad with my grandmother, Vivi, that she could live 94, 95 years and just her last couple of years just be filled with this kind of sadness. It's just upsetting to me.
Yeah, absolutely. How is your relationship with Anne at this point?
I don't talk to her really, so Caitlin.
I talked to her here and there because she was closest to our father at the time of his death. So I can get, talk to her about information, ask her questions about, hey, do you remember this or that? Just to get some nuggets of information since the police haven't gone back and talked to her.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know someone's in touch with her because she followed me on Twitter before the episode released. So
yeah.
Yeah. It's a tragedy on so many fronts. I know some people in the comments were wondering if there might be some angle where she would want his life ended for some reason, but we know there's a prenup in place. Do you think there's anything to a theory like that? I can't see it if there is. I mean, I know things can get really bizarre in personal relationships, but do you think there's any?
Well, I mean, I don't know how I want to say it, but if we were to just throw everything out there and just see what sticks against the wall, I'm not saying that I think that this is what happened. But the prenup basically, like, she would leave with what she came with. Basically, she wasn't getting like a certain amount of money, this and that. There was the father of her child, and our father, did not get along. I was at Disneyland with my dad in California, and he came out to visit. And there was some significant problems with with him, and he's actually ended up the father of her child. He's actually died since. He had some drug problems, but is it out of the realm of possibility that she thought that she may benefit in some way? Because if you die, the prenup doesn't actually kick into effect, so she may get something. I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of hurdles you'd have to jump there, and it kind of goes against what I think. If you actually look at, if you put all the evidence or circumstantial evidence into a pile and you see which one's the highest, it's not hers.
Right, right.
And I mean, I'm sorry. I think it's just important to say she is cooperating with police. She's willing to talk to them. And then the whole reason we found the cell phone was because of her. So
right.
I feel like if she had a part of it, she would have tried to hide that.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And the logistics of how, if this is a foul play situation, the logistics of him kind of conducting business and going to look at a property, like, who would be able to drive those types of details? Probably not his wife. This would be different if it was like, he was asked to go pick up something for her from someone, or running some kind of random errand, or an errand that he was known to run all the time. But we have this really wrapped around business in terms of what took him down there. Which I don't think anyone denies. I don't even think the business partner would deny that. Did he ever confirm, the business partner, to you guys that he knew that your father was going down there to look at a property?
He said he knew he was going down there, to New Orleans, because they were supposed to have lunch in New Orleans after.
Okay.
So
that's not quite the same as, we talked this morning, and I know he was heading to look at this property that we were thinking about buying together. Would it have been a purchase for both of them, or a purchase just for your father, you think, if this was a legit business deal?
I think it would have been both of them, but but we don't know, because no one has said, hey, I'm the one who told him about these apartments.
Right.
I mean, we know that Monday he went to look at a place in Lafayette, and we talked to the guy who was doing the deal with him. He's told us the information, and according to his wife, it was for an investment for my dad and the wife. So we know the surrounding circumstances of that one. For this one, no one said anything, so we have no idea.
Now, you've said the business partner hasn't really cooperated with police. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I mean, I know he gave an initial statement the day after it happened. They just talked to everyone in the office, the wife, all that stuff. But at the time, I don't think anyone realized the whole picture. And so it's not like they asked him any important questions. I've heard the statement, and it's not anything, you wouldn't learn anything from it. But since then, I know the previous detective said he has reached out to him. He's declined to speak, and they've reached out to his lawyer as well, and he's declined as well.
I also saw another attachment you sent me that spoke about the insurance companies, and it seemed like they actually didn't want to pay him out initially. It seems like they were kind of sitting on processing that request until there was a legal threat, essentially, to get them to release it. And the legal threat basically says, the business partner is not responsible for this. There's no way that an agent of his was responsible for this. There's one line in there that really just kind of sticks out, and you can tell that they looked at the clauses and it's a legal document, so of course they did, but they looked at the clauses in the actual insurance and basically said, look, it meets none of these conditions. You have to pay us this money.
So I could say for that they basically, they didn't want to clear them.
The police didn't.
Yeah, the police didn't clear him, and then he filed the suit, and basically he said, unless you're going to name me or you have something showing that me or one of my agents was responsible for this and paying my money. I actually met with the NOPD, the FBI, and the homicide detective's boss was all in there in a room with me one time. I walked in. It was like a movie. There were 4 FBI agents in there. I sat down with them, and the homicide detective, my detective's boss said, "Look, we did not want to clear it. We did not want to release the money. We got a lot of pressure from some higher ups at the NOPD that live on the North Shore that we need to release this money." And so we ended up releasing it. And he told me, "I wish we could take that back." And he,
So it's not completely out of the realm of possibility. I mean, you've got them being very strong and thinking that there might be something funny going on here and we shouldn't turn that money over. You've got the insurance company thinking that based off input they're likely getting from NOPD. So I don't think anyone could knock the two of you for thinking that there could be something to this theory as well. I mean,
yeah, and I think to note the FBI is a part of this investigation.
And I'm surprised. I'm really surprised the insurance company was just so. It's a large sum of money. I'm surprised they weren't a little bit more put up more of a fight or before dispersing these funds. I feel like they could. Why can't they throw out? Hey, we'll put out a $250,000 reward out there.
Right.
And if they can find out that, the business partner was behind it, then that $250,000 gets them back $5 million.
Right. But I could also see where they wouldn't want their business represented as not paying out on their policies. I'm sure they look at it from a lot of different angles and what's the best thing here? Could make a lot of noise if all of a sudden, hey, they're holding on to money they're supposed to give to someone. What's the rest of the country paying them for? So I get it. It's a tough situation, but I think it's important to note that they were reserved and moving very cautiously when it came to paying that out, and especially the conversation that you heard with the investigators. So when's the last time that you guys spoke to the business partner?
Not since about May 2013.
Okay, and that was around the same time where you showed him the copy of the will, right?
That was the last time. Yeah,
that is the last time. Wow. Did the business partner ever offer any assistance in the investigation?
Mm-mm.
Never offered a reward or to put up some money to find the killer or anything like that?
You got to keep in mind, this is his best friend, and he won't even speak to the police when they're trying to set it up and coordinate a meeting through the DA on the North Shore. He won't meet with them because this is what the detective told us. So the detective told us that he was afraid they were going to try to pin something on him. And I'm sorry, I listen to all these true crime podcasts too. Not many rich white men get things pinned on them,
Yeah, that's a good point. He'd sure be able to defend himself if they came at him in a bad way, and he could flip that around to a lawsuit where he's recovering damages as well. So
and it's his best friend. Remember, he told us his best friend was killed, but he doesn't want to talk to police to help solve the murder of his best friend.
Well, I would just say, if this is my best friend and I just made $5 million on his death, you know what? I might put up $100,000 or $250,000 or even $500,000 as a reward for finding the killer. You would think that he owes him something, let alone his family. But of course, his interests, pulled in a very different direction once he was actually looking at all those zeros, I guess. So you guys did hire a PI at one point, and then you let the business partner know that you hired a PI. What was his reaction?
Well, I don't think we actually let him know that we hired a PI, but I think the PI established contact with GA.
Okay.
And that's who we found out whose phone number that was. And so then GA contacted the business partner after the PI established contact with GA. To inform him that there was a PI working the case. Then the business partner asked Chris, and I mean, I guess you could talk to since this happened to you, Chris, but asked Chris if we had hired a PI. And of course, Chris denied it to him because we were like, oh no, that wasn't us. We don't know who did that.
Yeah.
But that's how we established a connection between GA and the business partner.
That's interesting. Chris, how did that conversation go when you actually talked to him?
Yeah, I mean, so this was back, I was still living in California at the time, but I remember I was still in contact with him. I didn't think that at that time that he had anything to do with it. So that's why I was still talking with him. But yeah, whenever that happened, it kind of like, I don't know, it hit me the wrong way that this guy would contact him, and he could contact him and just say, hey, like, our business partner, that got murdered, there's this PI on the case. Now, it could be totally innocent, but for some reason, I just kind of like, when he told me that, I just said, no, we haven't. It was easier for me just to say it wasn't us that did it, because there could be other people that hired a PI. Sure. I didn't want to answer questions,
Yeah, sure. Wow, that's interesting. That's interesting that GA would make that call and essentially tip him off. What would that be about? All right, so we've covered that you guys have a PI. Not any real major discoveries that we can talk about that the PI found. Did the business partner do anything else strange around the time of your father's murder? And I'm kind of leading towards a conversation I've had with Caitlin before about emails.
Yeah. Do you want to go into it, Chris, or?
Yeah, I mean, so we had a conversation with the business partner after the funeral and everything, and he made it known to us that, again, just like the will situation, he some individuals went through his emails to try and they wanted to make sure there was nothing in his emails that would get him in trouble as far as with his marriage, maybe, because they always wanted to be sure that there wasn't any kind of like Match.com or anything in there, because I think in the prenup there was a clause in there that said if he was ever committed infidelity or anything, that he would have to pay like a certain amount to his wife at the time. And he's like, there wasn't anything. We didn't find anything in there. And Caitlin has subsequently called up to the different like dating sites and just seeing, did he have any kind of account with y'all, and she wasn't able to find anything. So, but the reason why that's kind of strange is that like he has this history of acting like he's doing things like for our benefit, but then really, like, I mean, he could be going through his emails. I haven't found any email regarding this Mark 7 apartments at all.
Right.
Nothing. So, or nothing to do with, I mean, he didn't set up a meeting. This person you're supposed to meet with, it's written on the paper. I mean, there's nothing showing any kind of communication with them. And so, I mean,
and now he's telling you that he's had someone go through your father's email to clean it up, essentially, maybe for a reason that isn't all that true. And let's just make another point here. Even if it is true, even if he did know your father was on dating sites and that could screw up the prenup, so what? What if that information leads to finding who the killer is and you have someone go and delete a bunch of messages? Are you kidding me?
But it's just because this is what his MO has been. It's like, hey, look, I'm doing this for you. Look, I'm doing this. He's not asking us, hey, can I go through the email? He's already doing it. And
right.
You know that, I mean, there's other things that he's done in the same vein where it's like, hey, I'm doing this to benefit you. But then it's really like, well, hey, you've had access to his emails? At that time, we didn't have access to them yet.
Right.
That was the thing. I didn't
did.
have access to emails yet at that time. So, because this was like soon after the funeral.
Yeah, that's insane. So we know he didn't offer any reward. We know he didn't really assist the investigation. As a matter of fact, it seems like he's kind of hindering the investigation when he's approached. Did he show up to the memorial service for your father?
He did. And according to his wife, I mean, I don't know who his lawyer is, but his lawyer was present.
He brought his lawyer to your father's. Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting. Mm-hmm. So how did you see the business partner's phone calls that day? Because I know that you have some information about those.
Yeah. So when I called to get our father's phone records, they sent me the entire office's phone records, including the business partner.
Oh, gotcha. So
yeah.
What did you notice in his phone calls that day?
So yeah, we definitely noticed some strange activity because we have a couple of months, I think like a month or so, a couple months prior, I think we did January and then through the rest of that month. And noticing, and I can go through the times and tell you, starting from when he called our father or his number registered to him, at 9:10 a.m., the business partner's registered number calls Bruce, and that's approximately 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. So then at 9:12, so when he gets off the phone with our father, at 9:12, the number calls a DG,
okay.
And that's approximately 2 minutes. And then at 9:14, calls that DG back again, and it's approximately a minute. And then 9:14, so the same minute, within the same minute, he calls his office. Now, then after that, there's no incoming or outgoing calls, which doesn't seem very typical for a work day in the middle of the work day from what we've noticed from the patterns of his cell phone. And then at 10:27 a.m., which was after the shooting, he calls, his phone calls the office number again, and that's approximately 5 minutes. And then it resumes its normal pattern of a bunch of calls after that, incoming, outgoing.
So DG, possibly another person of interest in this?
Yeah,
I mean, I would.
I also think that he called DG. He was one of the first people he called after the office. I think he called DG. I have to look that up.
I can look it up. Hold on.
Yeah, let's check that. So he does call him again, but it's at 10:56.
Yeah. And so he calls him again at 10:56.
Okay. And does DG talk to the business partner regularly? Are you seeing other phone calls at other days in there? Does that phone number pop up?
Well, they were involved in business. I mean, this DG was involved in different business companies with our dad too.
Okay.
So
okay.
But he's also kind of a wild card character.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know. I can't go into more about it, but it's just if you could Google if you ever.
Well,
Gotcha.
I mean, I guess taking it back to the phone records or whatever and how it goes silent. But then I think it's important to note that in speaking with the wife, the first two people at the hospital were the business partner and DG.
Oh, really?
To arrive there, yes, she said whenever she walked in, DG was outside and said, "I'm so sorry," to her. And she still didn't know what was going on. So
the phone call that happens, if we assume DG wasn't involved in some way, the phone call that happens at around 10:56, is that right? From the business partner to DG could be him letting him know that Bruce has been shot, possibly. But we've got those strange kind of a 2 minute and a 1 minute phone call that happened right before the shooting.
Just a weird, I don't know, something just doesn't feel right necessarily.
Is DG cooperating with investigators?
I don't think they've reached out.
Okay.
Because I think, again, it's us pointing it out.
Yeah.
Because, we were the ones who got the records. The police didn't.
Sure.
And so we're the ones telling them what we see.
Well, I hope the police would get records as well. I hope they would actually even do their own pull on that. But you're not.
I mean, I think
they have
it might be too late now.
But, they got these same phone records we have, but I don't know what they've done.
Right. To analyze it. Yeah. And your father actually had plans for later in the day. What was he supposed to do after his stop at the Mark 7 apartments?
So he had plans to have lunch with the business partner and we'll call this other person CB.
Okay.
So they had lunch plans to all meet together.
Do you know what time?
I just know lunch. That's
Just
all
lunch.
I know.
Okay, so
I don't know early lunch. I don't know any of that. But
yeah, I don't know. Nothing else on his schedule outside of that, though?
we don't know his schedule. Not that, I mean, his schedule basically is what people have told us.
Okay, gotcha. Is there any possibility that this was a random robbery in your mind?
I mean, like, I'm not somebody, I would like to, like, not rule it out. I mean, because, like, it could have been, sure, if, like, they had a guy that saw an opportunity, because, if our dad looked like somebody that might have had some things of value on him, they could have, just got lucky and shot him and, not had a gun that did not, eject a casing, not leave any DNA. Just take his wallet, cell phone, not try to take his truck, not try to take anything else that was in there, and then go and just pawn the phone and never even attempt to use his cards. I mean, yeah, it could be, but it just doesn't seem likely.
Yeah, he would have to be like a genius robber that only does it that specific way.
Yeah, even lucky, but then lucky. But then the other thing is that it's kind of like you can't just like contort the story just to fit like that. You think it's a random robbery because I mean, come on, like if you're either an irrational felon or you're committing this irrational crime by killing somebody for a phone and a wallet. You're not going to all of a sudden get rational and
right.
I can't use the cards.
All this up with the gun, can't use the cards. Well, I'm not going to take the iPad. I'm not going to take the truck. I'm not going to take any other stuff. I mean, come on, it's one or the other. You know.
Yeah.
So
it seems too much to believe. It's hard. It's hard to believe that it's a simple robbery. What about for you, Caitlin? Any other?
I mean, I think the same. I think I think all good points. And I think one of the biggest things was the ballistics thing, how he explained that the gun is never showed back up again. And that would never happen for someone. If they were in desperate need of money, they would sell it and it would be used again. And they're not rationally thinking about any of that. So I'm with my brother. Yeah.
And is he really going to, get rid of the gun because he's used it in a perfect murder, let's say, and then buy another gun with a few $100 that he's going to make for trying to sell your father's phone somewhere? Or, was your father known to carry a lot of money? I know I've asked you this, Caitlin, you didn't really know, but Chris, do you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think it was like, it would be anything that was, outrageous. I don't know. I mean, the thing is, like, if they would have tried to, rob him and ask him for his wallet and stuff, like, he would have just given it to him. So, like, I don't know, how we would have gotten to the point where we were looking in the wallet, to see what he was carrying. He didn't carry, like, a money clip, or he didn't have it in a way where you could see the money. I think it's more of this guy looks out of place in this neighborhood, right? And so he's a nice truck. He probably was dressed nice or whatever. And, hey, let's, I mean, that would be what the random act would be. If it was a random act, it would be just like profiling.
Right. Well, and then we get this interesting character, Richard Sharp, that pops up in this story as well. Do you guys think that there's any possibility that your father's murder is connected to Richard Sharp in any way? I know he's tried to kind of pull it that way, and then now he says, no, I was lying the whole time. What do you think?
Well, he was pulling it in a way that he was blaming the business partner, and then he ended up getting busted on some fraud charges, and then he was defrauding a business that my dad, the business partner, DG, a lot of these guys were involved with. So they actually busted them on that, and then as part of the settlement, it was weird. It's pretty weird. I don't know, but as part of the settlement, if you can go online and read it, he basically said, I made up all these things about the BP being involved in the murder of Bruce Cucchiera. I made sure his kids saw it, this and that. So just kind of strange that would be planted inside a settlement of a fraud, case.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It does kind of point out what type of character he is if he was lying about that, or could be that he wasn't lying at the time and that's kind of what was done to silence him. Was there any other legal issues that your father was participating in that could be related to this?
Yeah, so I've talked to quite a few people surrounding this lawsuit, but it was a company that the business partner owned. And I actually spoke with and met with the lawyer, and, sitting down with him, I had asked if this was important at all in relation to my dad. And he had stated to me that if my dad would have testified, that the outcome of the case would have been different.
And we're talking, there was, business partner was, had about 7 figures exposed here.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of real estate or services related purchase, multi-million-dollar type deal. Yeah. A lot of exposure. Okay. Gotcha. Is there anything that the current lead detective would like to share with the public? I know that you just spoke to him before today, because we were getting all the questions together and kind of having him also vet them. Anything that he wanted to share with us?
I mean, I think he just wants for everyone to know it's still an open and active investigation, and they haven't ruled anything out, and that they are investigating all avenues.
Okay, good. And I did just want to give you a chance, because I promised you we would. I know this is going long, but I want to touch on your frustrations with how the investigation went and give you a chance to highlight some of that. So tell us about how this went wrong in your eyes from the start.
All right. I'll try. So the first detective that had the case was Orlando Matthews. He assumed, and I don't blame him, but the assumption at first was that it was a random deal just because where he was at, the area he was in. But then once things started, facts started coming in, I think everybody started to realize, whoa, this is probably not a random situation. So at first, he was keeping tons of, friends, family, just informed of everything. And then as he realized that it wasn't, probably going to be a random deal, he really just cut everybody off. Didn't get any information from him. So had little to no contact with anybody. He kind of just did a sloppy job with, just the initial statements, it just wasn't impressive at all. I mean, that's obviously the time right after it happens when the information that you gain is most crucial and to helping solve the case, and it was just wasted. And he ended up getting into some sort of accident, and he was subsequently just switched responsibilities or retired. It was then handed off after about 6 months to Detective Richard Chan, kind of like this new guy this new detective that Caitlin's been working with. Mm-hmm. He was very kind of eager at the beginning. He was, actually gave us a lot of confidence that something would happen, that he's solved a bunch of cold cases. And so he actually had a very open line of communication with me. That's what his rule was. He's like, I will text and call you, and you can tell your family what you want to tell them, but I'm not going to have aunts and grandparents and wives and all these people calling me. So he started the investigation over from the beginning, but then, again, there were always these things where, I'm going to go meet with this individual that works in the office, because I could tell that she was kind of scared to talk in the initial interview, and then he would never go do it. Oh. He would tell us, I'm going next Thursday. If I don't go by next Thursday, you give me a call. And I would call, hey, did you go? No, it's Mardi Gras, or no, we have the Sugar Bowl down here, or no, it's this. There was always an excuse. And so he didn't do that. Then, like I told you the other time, I walk into the room, the FBI's in there. We're going over this whole thing. The FBI says, you know what? We want to help with the case. The NOPD they can have the use of all our resources. Whatever we have that the NOPD needs, they can use it. I find out later that basically the detective just dropped the case file off and everything at the FBI and left, didn't do anything with it. The FBI agent said, look, that wasn't the agreement. We don't have the bandwidth to take over and do the investigation. I don't even know if they could. But he said we were giving them use of all our resources, and he just expected us to just, run the investigation. So they returned it back. So that kicked it back another, 6 to 7 to 8 months. And then he just kind of didn't do anything with it for a while. And then he ended up changing roles, and now it's with the new guy. But I mean, there are a couple problems. Like I said, it's talking to the individuals that are on our dad's phone log, for that day. It's the things like the iPad. My dad did everything on his iPad, everything. And they have not gotten into it because of the passcode, the 4-digit passcode. We've given them several passcodes to try, and they haven't tried them. Our dad doesn't have, just like all of us, we don't have like a ton of these different like codes all over the place. We kind of use the same ones. And so he uses, so they need to try that stuff. It's kind of just police 101 stuff that they should be doing. I was very patient. We were all very patient with the cops because they were keeping such a communication line open between us. And I didn't want to burn that bridge, but no, not anymore. I don't even deal with this new guy, so maybe he's nice and everything else, but I mean, it's frustrating to me.
Yeah.
The lack of inactivity is just, it's just jaw-dropping, and it's almost like they're just waiting for something to fall in their lap. They're not doing any sort of police work. None. It's none of it. So I don't know. It's just frustrating. It's just like it's like, oh, well, GA doesn't want to talk to us. So, well, he just doesn't want to talk to us. Okay, we'll move on to something else. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I think the biggest issue for me is that there's actually credible leads that could lead somewhere. Like the phone. Like, we know who had the phone, who was in possession of the phone, the statements about the phone. Let's press that a little bit harder. Let's figure out where that goes, and not just like, oh, I've talked to them, but like, I need to follow up. And that's kind of where it's left off, where it's like, you can maybe find an answer, but now here we are 7.5 years later, and they're going to have to try to remember. And now they can use whatever excuse. It's like, how do you not have these conversations whenever you get the phone? And why did it take a month to go get the phone?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you guys. And I think it might be a good thing that you're working this the way you are now, where Chris, you're kind of stepping back and Caitlin is kind of stepping forward and being the main contact. That actually might not be a bad system for you guys to keep doing. Run it until Caitlin's burned out. And if Chris needs to swing back in, tag team it like that. I speak to so many people that are dealing with cases like this, and they're the only one doing it. And it's a heavy, heavy responsibility. So I really appreciate that you guys are sharing that and helping each other with that. You definitely need to do that. Obviously, we don't want to give out the business partner's identity here. But I did just want to make a statement. Am I correct that he does in some way have some level of integration or influence with police in that area?
Yes.
Okay. And we'll just leave it at that. So is the FBI still involved?
To my knowledge, yes.
Okay. Okay. And finally, what can we do? What can people do? Obviously, I know there's people that have information. Maybe they're not talking. So there's rewards. There's different channels. Can you let us know what can we do to help you guys?
Yeah. I mean, as far as rewards, Crime Stoppers is offering a $2,500 reward that you can submit an anonymous tip through them. We are also offering our own reward of $40,000, for the arrest and conviction of the suspect or suspects involved. And you can submit your tips through either the detective calling the police department, or going to justiceforbruce.com and submitting a tip through there.
Yeah. And let me just put a message out, because this is an interesting thought. If that guy took the wallet and cell phone and he wasn't related to the shooting, he could get $2,500 if he would just call Crime Stoppers and put the right tip in. So, and you can absolutely remain anonymous. We've talked about it on this channel several times. They give you a randomized number. You wait until you hear the case has been solved. You contact them back with that number and they say, yep, that's the tip. Here's your money. So it certainly does happen. I've talked about it before, but Okay, excellent. Anything that you guys wanted to touch on before we wrap up today?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is everyone keep talking about it, sharing it. That has been, I mean, this from doing the first episode of this, I mean, has totally, I feel like, moved the needle. Mm-hmm. So as long as we keep talking about it and presenting a unified front, and everyone who knew my father, people who know us, to share this, that is what's going to happen. Because if it's just us two standing up saying, hey, something's not right, we aren't going to get anywhere. But the more of everyone else that stands up and says something isn't right here, the NOPD needs to do something, someone needs to step in and do something, then we'll actually get the case going.
I agree. Chris?
I just, appreciate you giving us the opportunity to make this more, seen and viewed. And, I just hope that, especially people in our area, obviously we appreciate all the shares and views everywhere, but the people in the New Orleans area, I just hope that, if you think that there are individuals in New Orleans that need to talk to police, that they should be doing that because it's the right thing to do. It's also the right thing to do for you to share this. Don't be scared. Share this. Yeah. This is the right thing to do.
Yeah, I was impressed in looking around this case. I saw some very vocal social media members, and I want to kind of put the bug out to you guys. I know you talk about controversial subjects already. I know you've talked about the business partner already. Please help us circulate these videos. Help us get this story out to some more of the locals there. I think the local pressure is really going to be a deciding factor when it comes to this case. Outside of course, if we can find a local that has the right information, man, would that be helpful? But outside of that, we're talking about a Davy versus Goliath situation in what you guys are facing, and they need support. They need other people. So please help Caitlin and help Chris, and maybe we can find justice for Bruce. You guys sit tight. I will be right back with you just as soon as I finish the show. Thank you, Brain Scratchers, so much. Thank you for giving me this forum to be able to help people like Bruce's family in cases like this. And once again, just thank you so much for all the respect that you gave to that first video, the amazing thought and comments that you put out there. I hope we'll continue that conversation in the comments down below. And just like they were asking, please share, share, share. We need to keep raising exposure on this case. I can't do that without you guys. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you back here on Monday with a brand new episode of Case Cracked on the Lord and Arts channel.